Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Ryan to Ride Mechanic channel. How the heck are you doing today? Alright, on today's show, I wanted to talk about this. Imagine that you're getting in your ride, your favorite ride, you close down the restraint, getting ready to go. You're already kind of nervous because you've seen rides fall apart before, and then you start thinking about how safe you are on that ride. Don't worry, I inspected that. Or at least, I said I did. Let's get into it.
Now get ready. Here we go.
Alright, welcome to the channel. Today's video we're going to be pulling back the curtain and talking about what happens to things when safety violations occur, when lockout tagout is ignored, when service bulletins go unheeded, and when ride inspections just flat out don't happen. We're going to take an in-depth look at a bunch of these things and some scenarios. I'm going to have some real life examples too about things that happen when you kind of miss the mark on safety. Sometimes it's intentional, sometimes it's not. Okay, so let's start off with a handful of examples. We're going to talk about safety violations on rides. What is a safety violation on ride? Well, there's things you can do as a guest or as an employee in some cases that manufacturers don't agree with. Things like stunting. Stunting was a big thing that SkyCoaster came out with. They said, hey, no stunting on our rides. That means the ride is only intended to be used one way, use it for that way only, and do not deviate from that whatsoever. Anything else is considered stunting, and it can be dangerous and or deadly depending on the equipment you're working with. The next thing is bypassing switches. Now, I've never ever bypassed anything before in my life. I can't say it with a straight face. Oh my gosh. Oh no. In the maintenance industry, we bypass the crap out of so much stuff. Now, pull it back a little bit. No, we don't do it with you on there. Don't worry. Yeah, no. Mainly what we do is we bypass creature comforts, and it makes it easier on the maintenance staff. Now, this is typically not stuff that's done on your everyday equipment. It's done during the time of year when the ride is not in operation. For example, I've done my fair share of load testing rides by myself, and you're just out there running cycles on a piece of machinery time after time after time. Well, a lot of older rides require 2 to 3 people to dispatch, and a lot of times those people just aren't there. They don't want to pay another maintenance guy to stand out there simply every couple minutes just to go over and just go push the button and have a dispatch. So we do interesting things, like I'll get into like an operator panel, and I'll take it apart and I'll get into the contacts behind here. Now, this is not the best example, but basically on the back side of a switch, there's a set of contact blocks back here. The contact blocks are where the signal wires go. They actually connect the button to whatever you're trying to do. So typically it's a contact that's basically 2 wires going like this. Well, this is located at the opposite end of the station, and rather than paying somebody all that money just to stand there and every 2 minutes push that button in, basically what we do is we take another wire, another cable like that, and I just stretch it across the station, and then I open this box up and I put 2 wires right onto the back of that, and then on the other side I get another wire, another small box, and put a button in it and wire those 2 right to the side of that. So I've basically duplicated the button somewhere else. That way, right at the panel, I could press that button and press the one on the panel at the same time, get the ride to dispatch. Now, that has its own safety issues that you have to be careful of. For example, the reason why they put 2 of those buttons in the station is generally so someone could look down the load side of the vehicle and someone can look down the unload side of the vehicle and make sure 100% of the vehicle is clear. Now, on a lot of rides, you could simply just look over, verify nobody's there. Suspended rides, you crouch down and look underneath. And you look underneath where nobody's feet is and you say, yep, nobody's there. That's the way you could send a ride by yourself. Now, it really helps that the park is closed in these conditions because you don't have to worry about random people standing around. If you ever want to bypass the ride, if you ever want to bypass it with the park open, you pretty much don't do that. You should always have a second person up there unless the ride is 100% segregated from people. You have signs and barriers up, and I wouldn't even do that with the staff around. Like if operations was up there, I still wouldn't do it. If operations there, I'm having one of the operators do that. Or I'm having the operator dispatch the ride. Let them do it. That's what they're there for. The other one is non-OEM parts in use. Now, This gets kind of hairy because the manufacturer out there basically says you only buy the parts from us and nowhere else. Well, everything on the ride is a part. So, like these guys right here. That's a ride part right there. That exact thing, that's a ride part. That's a ride part too. So the manufacturer says you only buy those from us. But when you take them apart and look at them, it's like, well, not these particular ones, but it's like, well, that's this guy right here. That's an Allen Bradley 800T series key switch. All the rides use them. That's what they are. It would be a waste of my time and money and shipping to go back to Intamin or Vekoma or B&M and say I need an Allen Bradley 800T key switch when I could just go to my local Allen Bradley dealer and buy the key switch from them. Why would I not do that? So, but that is using a non-OEM part on the ride. So there's certain things that you have to deal with where engineering might want to take a look at it and verify that, hey, I want to buy this key switch from a local supplier, and engineering might want to see it if it's the first time doing this. They want, well, let me see, and they want to look at all of it and how it acts and look at a spec sheet from Allen Bradley and what the switch actually does and say, yeah, okay, that's what we call a like part. That is a like part. You can go ahead and put that in the machine, test it first, make sure it works just fine. Yep, okay. Go ahead and use that all over. Next thing we're going to talk about is creative fixes where the ride has to be up. That's basically bypassing something. Now, just like I brought up with the examples of the key switches, and push buttons and things like that. Now, like the key switches and push button things that I just brought up, these are things where we need the ride to be up and running and we need to replace a part, but we don't necessarily have the exact part that's supposed to go in there. We have something that's close. We have something that's in kind, not like, it's in kind. So instead of replacing that key switch with the Allen Bradley 800T operator, this is a H3103 operator, I might have something similar that might do the job. So I might have something where when you put the key in, we'll use this as the example for this video, right? You put the key in, and in this case, this one's in one position, turn it, it's maintained, and the key's locked. I can't pull it back out. But I might have one of these on the shelf when this guy breaks. I might have one where I could put it in, turn it, but it's just a momentary, so it springs right back. So it might be one of those things where it's like, okay, that it won't maintain, it'll spring back. And then I have to decide, well, what happens if I'm switching between modes? Let's see, and I put this into like a manual mode, and then it springs back on me. Well, that means it goes right back into automatic mode. All right, so if I put this in there where it was spring-loaded and went back, would I be able to still do the manual functions that I need in the morning time while holding this key? Because now I've lost a hand, right? And now I'm having to hold this key the entire time while I do my other stuff because it's no longer a maintained switch. I go, yeah, it could be done. It's kind of inconvenient, but it could be done. So it's like, okay, so I'll go up and I'll put this key switch in its place. Because my other options were one where when I turned it, I could remove the key again. And it's like, ooh, I don't want to accidentally leave that in manual mode. That would be really bad. Can't do that. And then the other one would be to change a style to one like operations has a key to. It's like, well, I don't want operations switching between automatic and manual mode. So, okay, it's like, all right, I could fix the ride if I put in a different key switch. How long is that good for? It's like, well, that's realistically, it's just as good as long as I can order the correct part that comes back in. This happens a lot with electrical components, key switches, push buttons, relays, contactors. Basically, we might not have the exact relay that goes in one particular position, but like realistically, electrically, when you boil stuff down, it's like, what is that? That's a 24-volt coil with 3 normally open contacts. It's like, okay, we got a billion different things out there that'll do that exact same thing. Different configurations, different numbers on them, all sorts of stuff. But most of the time, when you get up into higher service things like something HVAC controls or something like that, you get a lot of current being pulled through the relay, but not necessarily the configuration's still the same. But we don't necessarily need that when you talk about controls. It's all typically low voltage DC stuff, maybe 100 volts on it at the max, but That's about it. So that's when you get used to non-OEM parts. But other things we use non-OEM parts on are sometimes bigger components. I'm sitting on one, actually. There we go, this guy. This guy is made for an Intamin suspended impulse coaster, but this whole seat's actually made by Ralph Alberts. Ralph Alberts makes the whole seat pan, insert, and everything. The company I worked for went through all the engineering hassle to basically duplicate the seat. So they weren't buying it from Intamin every single time. It was bought from a different company because the supply and everything was better. The corporation I worked for went through all the engineering hassle to fabricate this seat essentially and make sure it was just as good, if not better, than the OEM seat. So they really had to do all the mathematics behind it, and then they stuck their neck out on the line saying that that is the thing that they're going to use. And it's a non-OEM part used on the ride. The other one that we come across is things like using ride functions in ways that they aren't intended to be used. So this is anytime operations or maintenance in that fact finds out some little quirk with the ride. Basically, the manual, when you talk about operating a ride, it's very specific. You push this button, you hold this till that time, you have to hold this here, you have to do that there, and it walks you through a step-by-step of how exactly that ride should operate, how it needs to function. Now, when you do stuff outside of that, it might create faults or something else. So the manufacturers typically don't want that to happen. There's a lot of manufacturers that come from Germany and Netherlands over there in that area, and it's a very pointed language. I say that because most of my viewers here are in the US. I know I have a lot of viewers overseas as well. Thanks for watching. But it's a very pointed language over there. So in the Netherlands and Germany, in those areas, they are very specific with the language. In the US, we do things really backwards. We kind of run off the guardrails of things. They say it once and then it's done. That's it. End of the story. They say you press and hold the buttons for 3 seconds and then you let them go. And then I say, well, what happens if I hold that longer for 3 seconds? And over there in Germany, they look around. My favorite, the yes, but we have told you that you hold the button for 3 seconds. And I go, yeah, but what happens if I hold it longer than 3 seconds? They say, yes, but this is not a problem because we've already told you to hold it for 3 seconds, and that is all. It's like, well, what happens if it faults or something like that if I hold it longer than 3 seconds? It's like, yeah, but that's the reason why we told you to hold it for 3 seconds. It's an exact language. It's an exact culture. It's not one of these like we have lots of wiggle room to do other things. It's like, no, we have said it. It's done. I thought it was funny. I was at my current job. I did an installation of SAP, which is a computer program. And they said it's the same thing. It's they're over there in. It's one of the guys. They're over in Germany, and they're telling us about this. And I said, "What happens?" They say you do this and you do that. And I said, "What happens?" Because I know one of my guys is going to push this, button on the screen. They're going to click that. What happens when they click that? And they said, "You don't click that." And I said, "Yeah, but what happens when they do?" Because I just, guys are there. They're going to accidentally click it probably. And then what happens is you don't click that. But what's going to happen? They said, "We're telling you right now, you don't click that button. And if you do, well, we've already told you not to do it. So, end of story. We've provided the training." Just like, okay, all right. I've heard this before. We're not going any further in this conversation. It's done. They've told us. Done with it. All right. So then you get into some safety violations off rides. Things like going into areas where you're not supposed to be. Well, there's plenty of infield areas and things like that where you're not supposed to be, but I've done stuff where it was definitely a shady kind of gray area. So we installed a ride, LSM launch. It's inside of a tunnel, and as the vehicle was going out, we were getting a click from that vehicle, and we couldn't figure out where the click was coming from. And they said, what we need to do is we need to go down there and listen to it. So we went on the outside of the tunnel as the vehicle came out, and we listened for it. It's inside the tunnel somewhere. I can't hear it. And then
On 10.
we did a whole bunch of stuff back and forth, and I said, I want to go down there and listen for that click. So we hit ride stop, we did a panel lockout, and we went out to the end of the tunnel, and we were looking around out there. It's like all this is in the clearance envelope of the vehicle. Everything is in there. Everything is in there. Right at the very end of the tunnel, there was one pocket. It's not very big. There is one pocket right there that is not in the clearance envelope. And I'm like, I will sit right there then. And they said, what? And I was like, yeah, I will sit right there. I will wear safety glasses. I'll even have earplugs. I'll sit right there. And you guys can send the vehicle a couple times. We'll be on radio. And then I'll listen for that click. And I'll let you know. And then when I want to come back out, we'll lock it out at the panel again. And then once you guys give me a visual that over the radio that it's locked out, then I'll come up and come back. And everyone kind of looked around at each other and they're like, yeah, okay, all right. So I got everything we needed, went back down there, sat there, and we had 3 other people there with me because everyone is kind of like, I don't know about this. But we had 3 other people there, and everyone verified, yes. We're out of the clearance envelope completely. It's actually quite a ways back, but when you talk about clearance envelopes of a vehicle, it's like they're pretty big. It has to account for a lot of stuff. So I was a ways back. I felt I was perfectly safe, but I was still really, really close to that thing. So it was like, okay. So verified and went down there and heard the startup alarms and all the fans and stuff came on. And I'm there, I got my safety glasses and earplugs in, and I'm like back up against the wall like this, and they radio me. It's like, are you clear of everything? I'm like, I'm clear of everything. They're like, we're going to dispatch a train when you're clear. I'm like, I'm clear. Go ahead and dispatch a train. Okay, and here comes that train. You hear it go, and here it comes, it goes right by. It's like, oh, if that doesn't give you a healthy respect for things, it's like, holy crap. I know I was away from everything. I was outside the clearance envelope, but holy crap, having a big vehicle move by you that fast, woohoo. Oh, that was something else right there. But that was one of those things that's like, yeah, you probably shouldn't have done that. It's like, you're right. But I did. A slighter one that operators do all the time, sometimes just out of, they're not thinking about it, is crossing ride vehicles where they shouldn't. Now, a lot of us have seen this. We've been up in the station, and you see an employee out there, and they give some sort of a sign. There's a lot of things. There's like a crossing sign like that. Sometimes there's like a hand out or something like that where they want to cross the vehicle. Now, a lot of companies won't just let the employee just go across the vehicle willy-nilly wherever they want to. A lot of times companies specifically give you a spot that you can cross the vehicle. Sometimes it's not even on the vehicle itself. Sometimes they make the employees step across the track in a certain area. There's like a pan sitting on the track where they could safely step across it to the other side. But employees have to cross the vehicle or the track in an exact area. Typically, rule of thumb, most of the time it's closest to the operator panel. That way there's the most visual. They could see them easily. They go, yep, we know you're crossing there and all that other stuff. I forget, I was at Magic Mountain and someone was there. They're like, oh, hey, we want to talk to you real quick. And so it's like, okay. So they were on the other side of the vehicle. So they started walking through the vehicle right there. And even I was like, no. You can't cross there. And they were like, oh yeah, that's right. And they had to go back the other side and go up to the front of the vehicle and cross back over. I was just like, okay, all right. But it's that stuff gets the best of us sometimes when we accidentally or sometimes on purpose violate safety procedures out there. One thing that sometimes you don't understand that you're violating, but you're violating, is they're meant to keep you safe. So OSHA's been doing a lot of stuff. We now have arc flash studies out. All the big electrical equipment has arc flash stuff. If you're in any sort of electromechanical industry, you know about arc flash ratings. We never knew about arc flash ratings. Man, I can't talk. Seems to be a recurring thing with videos. I can't talk on them. I wonder why that is. Anyways, we were getting arc flash study done for the park. Had a company in with electrical engineers, and they were going through doing all the arc flash studies on all the disconnects everywhere. I'm in our Hus top spin, and we are having a problem with the drives, and I am just sitting there right next to the main disconnect. I'm actually sitting inside the electrical panel. I just got my butt down on the corner of it because we have the door open and we're troubleshooting. The door is where the big disconnect switch is. It's like a big rotary handle switch. So they've got the door open, so there's no way to turn that switch off, but we're having to do stuff like pull fuses in and out and things like that. So what I'm doing is I'm just sitting there all willy-nilly with like a 10-inch crescent wrench. And they're like down at the other end of the cabinet. They're like, turn it off. And I'm just like, click. It's off. They would do their thing. And then they're like, turn it back on. And I'm just like, click with the crescent wrench. Click, turn it back on. Wait a minute or two, turn it off. It's like, click, it's off. So I was doing this for a long time. Like a week later, we had an arc flash study completed. And we were looking at stuff, and I was like, oh, I wonder what the top spin is. I go back and look at that. It's like, after just being trained on all the arc flash stuff, all the videos, all the everything with it, when I looked at the arc flash study, it was a danger category disconnect. It's like, if you know anything about it, that danger means that there is no PPE that exists that will protect you from that arc flash that would happen if that thing decided to flash on you. And I was just thinking into like the week before about how I'm just sitting there in a disconnect, turning it on and off, and I'm just like, wow, okay. At the time, it was higher than, let's see, I know we had 40 calorie suits, but I think it was higher than 50 calories was the danger category disconnect. I think their top spin was something ridiculous. It was like 130 calories at the disconnect. Not as ridiculous, while we're on the subject, hey, might as well talk about it. Not as ridiculous as our impulse coaster, which was, let's see, impulse coaster was 256 calories in that little tiny room where the disconnect was. 256 calories inside that room. That's a lot. And there's nowhere for that blast to go if that were to flash on you. All right, some of our things also have an immediate repercussion, like when you don't follow lockout, tagout procedures. A lot of times people do this stuff to save time. A lot of people are like, oh, I'm just doing this. That's always the way accidents happen. They're like, I was just going to do this one thing real quick. It's not a big deal. I was just doing that one thing. So we were doing something on our shoot-to-shoot rides, and I wasn't there, but I'm hearing about this. For some reason, the lead at the time decided to go up to the top of the lift, and the water was off, but they had the ride in like a manual mode, and actually went between the lift, where you have the conveyor boards coming up over the top of the crown, and then they curve back over, and then it goes back down the bottom side, so it creates this like big pocket up there at the top. He was inside that pocket and didn't hit a ride stop or an e-stop or even throw the knife disconnect switch for the main lift. And then I don't remember how it happened because, again, I wasn't there for it. But the lift actually started. And the lift actually started back up. Somebody did something and the lift started back up. And luckily they were near the e-stop to shut it back off because, I mean, he was dancing in there trying to get out of that area. And it was not an easy in and out. So you have to climb through stuff. There's big metal supports. I mean, it is a blender inside that lift. Luckily it stopped though, because if it just gone another couple seconds, that would have been a fatality for sure. Then there's other things that people knowingly violate, like we put big fences up all around low spots where the coasters come by and they can hit something. When I first started working at the park, there was a maintenance, the welder, he was a welder for the park, and he was fired for picking up change inside the infield. but he was in an area where he could have been struck by the roller coaster. So it wasn't so much, there was two violations of policy. One was he was picking up change. Absolutely will get pretty much every mechanic fired right on the spot. Like if you ever caught picking up any sort of anything, whether it's change, money, a lighter, a phone or anything, mechanics pick up anything out of an infield and it's not for loss preventions, fired pretty much on the spot. Sometimes the park might even choose to press legal proceedings with that as well, because it might go bigger than that. And sometimes we do things where a minor shortcut has a bigger impact. Safety violations, like, yeah, this has happened twice. Yeah, it's like not only once, it happened twice. Mechanics, both times, wanting to save time on the inspection of the sky coaster when they're doing their cable inspections. So they wanted to run it up and down, so they run the stairs out there to the flight line so they could see the cables and do everything out there. Well, twice they accidentally left the cables with a strap hooked up to the stairs. If you've watched my videos before, you know where this is going. Then they bypassed the limit switches. They bypassed the safety limit switches on the other end where the stairs are supposed to park. So the control system thinks the stairs are where they are supposed to be. So then they hit up, start to winch it up, and they pulled the stairs right up off the flight line twice. What did we call that? That was called flying the stairs. They flew the stairs twice. Now, what that did is that both times that took that entire side out of operation for a full day. A day in one case, it was a couple of days on the first time, where we had to get NDT and replace. You had to replace all the cables and everything when that happens, because it's an undesigned load. The stairs are way heavier than 3 people are, so you have to NDT all the mounts and replace all the cables and replace the launch bridle and everything else that goes inside there. It is not fun. So that was a minor shortcut that turned into lasting impact. Another thing was the day I valleyed the Florist coaster. That was just something that it was a windy day, and it got in the block brakes for short penetration, which already means it was going slow. I already had a warning on the computer system like, hey, this is running slow. Double think about this again. So it's like, okay, but there was one on the lift hill, and I just didn't want the visual of that train sitting up there for a large chunk of the day. I just didn't want the visual of that train sitting there for the rest of the day. So I made the call when I thought the weather was right to send the train over, and it valleyed because of that. So that wasn't any fun. But that was just one of those things. Is like, I was just trying to visually get the train off the lift hill, and ended up causing an entire day's worth of downtime on the ride. And it cost a whole bunch of money. Crew had to work pretty much 24 hours straight to get that one fixed up. Sometimes in this, there are things that are like silent. It's like a silent alarm, but it's there telling you that something fundamentally isn't wrong. And a lot of times these things are ignored, or people just don't put the pieces of the puzzle together. For instance, we had I think it was made by Zamperla. I say I think because there are so many clones of these small little kiddie rides out there. Pretty sure it was Zamperla. It was a mini jet ride. And the thing started tripping out on the air compressor would throw the circuit breaker. So it started doing this on like a Tuesday morning. It would trip the air compressor. Tuesday afternoon it tripped again. And then the shift turnover happened. Well, we come in the next morning and it's tripped like 10 more times that night. They were out there like every 5-10 minutes resetting this, and it was in the turnover. They had a hard time keeping the ride running. They would just keep going into the panel and just resetting the circuit breaker every single time it tripped. We were like, what's going on out there? We gave it to the mechanic in the morning time, asked him to look over everything. They looked at it, was fine. It was starting to run, and then as soon as operations got there, air compressor tripped. It's like, okay, the supervisor and myself started making our way over there, and by the time we got over there, air compressor tripped again. It's like, all right, so we're really good. It's like, let's open this up. Let's see what this is all about. We had to do a very kind of sketchy thing. To get that to run, we had to turn off the rotation motor because the panel is inside the ride area. So what we had to do is we had to go in the panel and turn off the rotation motor so the thing didn't spin. So the air compressor would run with us standing right next to it, which is inside the ride envelope. So it's kind of like we turned it off and stood back and tried to dispatch, like, will it run? It's like, nope, but the air compressor kicked on. So we're like, okay, this is exactly what we want. So we went in there with the voltmeter and started reading like L1 to ground 2 and 3. It's like, okay, it looks like we've got our voltage coming in. At the bottom, it's like there's our voltage, and then it's like there's not a lot of voltage, and then it's like there's not a lot of voltage again. So we take the meter from going to ground and we go leg to leg right across the contacts. And it's like there was like 130 volts worth of drop across 2 of the contacts. And it was like, oh, well, that's the reason why it keeps tripping. The thing's burning up. So we took it out and got a new contactor, put it in there real quick. It wasn't the exact one, but it was 3-phase contactor that ran off at 24 volts DC. Cool. So we put the contactor in there, put the terminals back on, reset the thing, turn it back on. We ran like 4 or 5 cycles back to back with it. Didn't trip. Didn't trip the rest of the day either. It's like, got it. Cool. But they just, nobody thought to get out there and diagnose it. They just wanted to keep hitting the reset button, keep resetting the breaker, which I thought was way more of a pain in the butt than just fixing it. So this stuff has basically a domino effect in the park. There's operational fallout, meaning a lot of rides have ride stoppage. There might be an evacuation involved. The more this happens with rides, operations gets less friendly about operating the ride. There is that back and forth where maintenance turns the ride over and says it's okay to go, and then operations needs to run it. So if operations doesn't get the warm and fuzzy feeling that we're actually making progress with the ride, a lot of times rides break down a lot. We turn the ride back over to them because we're still trying things. We're still troubleshooting. We're still trying to figure out what it is that's happening. But if the ride breaks down in such a way where it causes an evacuation to happen, like where you got to get everybody off the ride, like the train's stuck on the lift hill, the train's stuck in a block break, something like that, no one likes to do that. Operations doesn't like to do that. So if you stick a train up there and go through a full-fledged evacuation, not just a simple ride reset, you have to do a lot more to restore the faith from operations that the ride is going to work properly afterwards so they don't have to do that again. This also, when our state, now granted all these places don't necessarily have a state audit like we used to, or like we did. So when the state came in to audit our paperwork, they would also look at this trend of breakdowns happening on this ride, and the state will then look for the corrective action that the maintenance department was doing. Like, what's the maintenance department doing? What they don't want to see is 70 ride calls that were all the exact same ride call, where the simple solution was just to hit the reset button and let it go. Reset, let it go. Reset, let it go. Reset, let it go. Even the state at that point wants to know, what'd you guys do to fix this? And they want some sort of an actual answer, not just we reset it and let it go. They want to know, what did you guys eventually do to that? What was the problem? They want to know the fix because now they are starting to lose faith that you're maintaining the ride properly. Now that has all sorts of other problems because now you have your governing body sitting there going like, hey, what are you guys doing? And then when you tell them what you're doing, they basically start to go, yeah, we don't really believe that's what you're doing, judging by your paperwork. Your paperwork and what you just told me don't line up. Something's wrong here. So auditors lose faith. Then there's the financial impact of this. At the front gate, when you have rides down, it turns people away. Yes, there are plenty of people that show up to the park and they say, I am only there to ride that one ride. I like Magic Mountain, right? So let's go to Magic Mountain and I am only there to ride X2. And I go up to the front gate and X2 is on the board as will not operate all day. Now, for people that have made the trek all the way out there, they bought the tickets in advance, they've paid for the parking, they're like, oh man, that really sucks, but they will visit the rest of the park. My visit to Cedar Point, I didn't get on hardly anything throughout the entire day. But that was my first time there, and it was really hot, and the park wasn't running well. But I made the investment, I already put the money up, I had the pass, I did all the stuff. It's like I was still going to enjoy what I could out of the park. Now, your season pass holders, people that might have parking wrapped up in their pass and all that stuff, they might go to the park that day, go out, see that X2 on that board, and turn right around and leave. Now, those are season pass holders. It's like, well, they're still spending money. The park still wants them to come in and spend money. They still want them to buy food or drinks or maybe even a souvenir if their friends are there or something like that. They still want those people to come back. Plus, you piss off season pass holders enough and they won't come back, period, to anything. So you got to keep them happy as well. This also reinforces the picture of if your park can't maintain the rides properly and they're always broken down, then even if the park is trying to do that, if the perception is that the stuff is always broken, then that is the perception of the entire park. Doesn't matter, you can have a ride that never, ever, ever breaks down. But if the one at the front of the park is constantly broken down, then people will just generally assume whatever crappy thing is happening over here is also happening over here as well. It's the same thing all around the park. It's not just a one-off particular instance. So you get generalized, put into a lot of group categories with this. Maintenance has fallout from these issues as well. They can spend all day fixing rides or resetting rides, and it won't get them anywhere. Because if you're not fixing them properly, you can go out there and reset the rides a bunch of times. You're just adding it to a list of things you got to do. I got to keep going out and resetting this ride. Instead of fixing it, you're just going to go out there and reset it. And then next time the ride breaks down, different ride breaks down, instead of fixing that, you're going to reset that too. And now you're spending all day, all your mechanics running around just resetting rides, one right after the other, not actually fixing it. Now, most parks won't run this way, but sometimes when it gets busy, you get people, especially that you get pressure to keep the ride up, and it is just from the top down. It is just go reset the ride real quick. Just get it back up and running. A hot day, the Rapids ride faults out. It's not, hey, let's shut it down and figure out what's going on for an hour and a half or 2 hours. It's like, nope, it's a hot day. People want to ride that thing. Just reset the ride and get it back up and running. Now, you can push back on that always if it's like, oh no, this is a safety issue. But a lot of times it is just some sort of nuisance fault that pops up where you probably could just reset it, depending on the troubleshooting. You guys want to see a video on troubleshooting? I was thinking about doing one of those. Like the whole video, basically, like trouble calls at 3 different rides, kind of like a mock scenario. And it's like, oh, take 3 different trouble calls. One's an easy reset, one's like a harder mechanical something, and possibly an evacuation. Try to go through those scenarios one at a time. Let me know what you think. Comments down below. And then the worst safety scenarios that come up basically are near misses. I mean, the worst obviously is where it completely fails and you have an accident. But as far as things just like being overlooked and things like that, a near miss is something that almost went completely south on you and you almost had an accident and there was almost a catastrophic failure. We actually had a near miss twice on the same piece of equipment, which was kind of worrisome. We ended up putting new trains on because of it. We went back to the back wishbone, which is it's a zero car, essentially. A lot of people are familiar with the term as zero car. It's the tail. It doesn't have a coach on it. It's just simply like it's a single piece with 2 wheel carriers. On the old top thrill trains, it was at the very front. Just a single piece called a wishbone zero car, had 2 wheel carriers. We went up this in the morning time and the mechanic calls up and says, I think I found a crack on that. We go there and there was a big crack like halfway through the wishbone. It was like, holy crap, that's no good. So we had to shut the ride down, do a bunch of NDT, and then a new wishbone had to be fabricated and shipped to the park. Like the ride was down for a long time. The other one that was even worse than that was a mechanic, came back, different mechanic, same ride. It's like, hey, found a crack on this. And we're like, it's an indication, it's not a crack. And the mechanic sent a picture of the crack. I'll use the back side of this. I kid you not. This was the side of the frame like this, and the mechanic's hand was like this inside the frame. He stuck his hand inside the frame, and it was just like, holy crap. Like, we went over there, and it's just like, Nope. It was like the whole frame was in the process of splitting in half. We could not believe that. We were like, holy crap. The thing opened, like, it was bad. That was it. Then we purchased new trains after that. We're like, nope, not doing this anymore. New trains, new stuff. These are officially done. Shut the ride down. So the aftermath of these things, there's all sorts of aftermath to them. Some of them just range from extended downtime on equipment that you just need to, like, just constantly gets reset. Some things are lots of extra money put into it for those things where it was gonna wear out, but it kind of just constantly wore and wore and wore and wore, and finally it just like completely crapped out on you altogether. You're going to spend a lot more money to maintain that. Preventative maintenance, even though it costs a lot of money, is the cheapest thing to do. Preventative maintenance is the cheapest thing every single time. Then it goes into the impact on the mechanic. If the mechanic is doing something, they aren't maintaining the equipment right, they are probably going to lose their job over that. They're not going to be hired back. Now, if you're a mechanic and say that's all I do is I work on amusement park stuff, mechanics in amusement parks can go get jobs at other amusement parks almost instantly because there is nobody out there with amusement park experience. So if you pop up with amusement park experience, you're almost hired on the spot. It's quite amazing. Unless you're doing something like you're fired because they weren't maintaining the equipment properly, you're not going to get rehired from that. And then there's legal ramifications too. What happens if something that you do injures somebody, right? Well, I just didn't grease that thing. It's like, oh no, something wasn't greasy. Oh no, what are we going to do? It's not greasy. Ooh, shut it down. It's like, what happens if I told you that something that wasn't greasy kind of was a finite component? It's like, oh, something didn't work properly, I guess. What's the big deal? What happens if I told you that was a restraint claw and the restraint didn't lock? Yeah, no smart ass remark for that one, huh? Yeah, like you can have real world consequences when you don't do things properly, and it could end up hurting or possibly killing something. So mechanics are held legally responsible for this stuff, as much as you could say like, well, the corporation was sued and this and that. Every time that corporation's been sued, I don't care which corporation it is, Six Flags, Disney, Universal, every time that corporation's been sued, the mechanic that was signed off that ride that morning was sued as well. Personally, they were sued as well. Now, generally, corporations will put an umbrella over that mechanic as long as they were doing everything right. The paperwork wasn't done right, if they were falsifying documentations, if they were signing off something that they weren't supposed to be, then that actually goes right down to the mechanic, and the corporation's umbrella doesn't extend to that. It's like, nope, you're going to take that lawsuit, 100% of that. And there can be jail time and things like that involved with that, so you don't want to deal with that. Safest just to do the ride inspection the way it says to do it. The human element and the psychological element to get this stuff up and running on time in full every single day is a lot. A lot of people push themselves to do things sometimes that aren't the best, and that's not good. There's that mixture too where they're like, oh, we don't want you to compromise safety, but get it up and running. No, we don't want you to cut corners at all. Don't cut any corners. The ride has to be up and running. There's a double standard happening there. It's like, we want safety, but get it up and running. And it's only until you can pull that thing and say, nope, it's not safe, or I'm not going to do this because that's not safe, or we can't do this, it's not going to work. The park, the management has to just accept, okay, for safety, it's not going to operate that day. Now, if it's a good park, they'll accept it. No problem. I can't sign this off because of this. You better have a plan to fix that. But, okay, fine. That's perfectly fine. If you're just doing it because you want to flex your muscle a little bit, not the right thing to do. All right, I think I've spent enough time talking about safety violations. If you want to comment, go ahead, put it in the comments downstairs. Like, share, subscribe, watch another video. All that stuff helps me out. I do appreciate it. If you want to contact me, you can contact me at ryantheridemechanic@yahoo.com. And to keep your safety violations down to a minimum, please stay off the air gates.